thanks for joining us today to learn about this very exciting new set of opportunities through CAPE, the Community Assessment and Education to Promote Behavioral Health Planning and Evaluation Project. We're going to talk about opportunities available under the CAPE 2 project today. But first, a shout out to our project partners. And first is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration that provides the core funding for this work, and also the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which helps organize the work and is the administrative contact for processing all the grant materials and such. And then finally, our partner regional rural development centers are very involved with this in various ways. And those are located at Penn State, Utah State, and Mississippi State. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about your presenters today. I'm Scott Loveridge, Director of the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development and the project leader. And with me is Courtney Cuthbertson. She's a postdoctoral fellow and project co-PI with us on the CAPE 2 project. So what are the goals? So in CAPE 1, we're really looking about how people get information, use information about community behavioral health. This one is really looking at addressing issues of mental health and substance abuse at the community level, more fully using the SAMHSA resources, linking SAMHSA with the incredible land grant and college and university network that covers the whole country, and then develop ways to complement the SAMHSA resources. And for those of you who aren't part of the land grant system, here's a map. It's a little bit dated now. There are a couple new additions to the system since this map was created, but it's still fairly relevant. We've got 1862 campuses, like your state universities, often have the word state in them, that were founded back during the Civil War to bring knowledge to the people, particularly in agriculture, but then it's branched out from agriculture into other domains as well. And then after the Civil War, the 1890 system got created, and these are the historically black colleges and universities serving that special population. And then in 1994, they added another set of universities, the blue boxes there, which serve tribal communities in much of the U.S. And so all of these folks are welcome partners in this project if they want to step up and join. And that includes not only the main campuses, but any offices, extension offices, whole system. So it's a system that covers the whole country very extensively, and lots of partnering opportunities. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the main drivers of some of this is that substance abuse and mental health issues vary quite a bit by place. I think Courtney's going to talk a little bit about this. So go ahead, Courtney.
Great, yes. So substance abuse and mental health issues, as Scott mentioned, do vary by place, and we have a good example of that here from some SAMHSA data looking at non-medical prescription drug use by teens. And we can see that there are some areas in the country where this is much higher and some areas where it's much lower. Different community characteristics may shape substance abuse and mental health issues, and just to give you some more examples of different differences, we can look at some of these behavioral health issues across states. For example, for alcohol, Alabama has a rate of 3.1% versus Alaska at 10%. Percentage of people with any mental illness in New Jersey is 10.6% compared to New Mexico at 23.6%. Any percentage of people with any substance use disorder is at nearly 13% in Nevada compared to 4% in Utah. So even though states may be close together and communities may be close together, they may have variations in what is going on in terms of community behavioral health, particularly related to substance abuse and mental illness issues. And further, the variations within state by place could be larger than across state variations. And when we're looking at specific issues, the forms of these may change, even if it is classified as the same issue. So for instance, with substance abuse, the type of substance that is abused may be different depending on place or community across different localities. So with CAPE, we are very interested in being community-based and getting in touch with local leaders. Local leaders are important for a number of reasons. They are able to control many resources within very specific legal or institutional constraints. They know the ins and outs of different community organizations. They make many decisions every day that might potentially affect community behavioral health issues. They are aware of the community. They've developed relationships with people and know people across different areas. And the local leaders might vary in the knowledge that they have about community behavioral health trends. And as we've seen with CAPE 1, local leaders may vary in the source of that information, who's providing the information about different behavioral health trends, and the local leaders may also vary in their understanding of which issues are high priority. They may differ in opinions on that. So in CAPE 1, it included 10 pilot communities that were chosen also through a competitive application process, through a nationwide search using communities with affiliations to land-grant institutions. The focus for CAPE 1 was looking at where people and community leaders specifically get information about behavioral health trends, and a concern in CAPE 1 was how best to engage people in using information. So how are they finding data about these different issues? How would they prefer to find data about different issues? And how might that affect the sense of which issues are really priorities? So through CAPE 1, we also did some work with each of the communities in priority setting and implementation through different meetings. And we have a couple examples of some of the things that were created out of CAPE 1. First is a nice example here from our community in New Mexico. We compiled secondary data from publicly available state and county level sources to inform what behavioral health trends were in those communities, and then along with the CAPE survey of community leaders, we're able to create, also with the help of our fantastic graphic designer, these two-page snapshots that describe the behavioral health context in that setting. So these snapshots are a way to start conversations with people about what are important behavioral health issues in each of the communities and work towards moving forward from there. So we have information, we know what the perceptions are about behavioral health, we have some information about what people have been experiencing in particular counties. Now, where do we go from there? So we have the snapshot. There is also an extended profile that was created for each of the communities. And I should mention that the snapshots and the profiles are available. You can see those on the healthbench.info website under the Communities tab. They're posted next to each of the community names. And then each of the communities had individual meetings, and I think we still have one upcoming. But just to give you some examples of what happened during those meetings, in Finney County in Kansas, one of the CAPE communities, from the survey, alcohol abuse, illegal drug use, and teen pregnancy had been most frequently selected as behavioral health priorities. At the Finney County meeting, that brought together approximately 40 community leaders. They were able to affirm which behavioral health issues were priorities, and they were able to reach consensus about what was going on in the community. So they said, yes, alcohol abuse, illegal drug use, and teen pregnancy are pressing issues here, but these are signs of something else, that these behavioral health issues were related to problematic family relationships, the need for strong and effective lifelong education, and also the need for economic opportunities across the community. So for everyone in the community to have access to positive economic opportunities. So from that meeting, they've also decided that their local behavioral health coalition is going to take the task of deciding what to do next. They will hold an additional meeting, contact community members, and work to see what they can do about these issues they've identified as priorities. Another example comes from our Garrett County, Maryland community. From the survey of community leaders, the most frequently selected behavioral health priorities there were illegal drug use, alcohol abuse, and non-medical prescription use. So at the Garrett County meeting, they were also able to affirm the CAPE survey results. They agreed that those three issues were high priority in Garrett County. And being able to talk about those CAPE results also brought the opportunity for people to talk about the stigma that people experience in the community when they are in need of behavioral health support, or when they are experiencing some kind of behavioral health issue. So they were able to talk about the existing stigma that was in the community. The decisions that came out of that meeting were that community members should be more involved in behavioral health planning in the community, so working to create a stronger network across the community to improve behavioral health, and also that they should keep developing community-based support services. So Scott, I'll hand it back over to you so you can talk about where we're going with CAPE 2.
Okay, thanks very much, Courtney. Great overview of some of the things that have happened in CAPE 1. So at CAPE 2, we're shifting the focus a little bit to look at early warning systems. At the national level, data are collected often through a sample survey of individual responses, and by the time that those data are collected together and aggregated, some of these issues have already popped up. For example, the heroin epidemic of last year comes to mind. So here we're trying to focus more on early warning systems, and there's really a whole set of activities that will kind of come together with this. So first, we're going to be doing some econometric work to forecast what might be going on in different parts of the country. Then we're having some barometer communities, which is an opportunity that we'll talk about in a little bit for people that want to get engaged with that. Another set of activities is around innovation communities, and then we're supporting that through interactions with the technical committee, regional specialists, and the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, which is we're supporting a fellowship program through that council for fellows to be placed at state epidemiologist offices. So how does this all interact? So we've got the technical committee and others sort of interacting with all of these, but the barometer communities are going to establish panels. And so these are groups of folks that are knowledgeable about the community and answer questions on a regular basis. The innovation communities are going to be looking at new ways to assemble existing data sets and put them into early warning format. And then the forecasting will help us identify new questions, new issues. As new issues come up, we can integrate that into the forecasting. The innovators might come up with some new leading indicators that would inform the forecasting efforts, and the new questions could go to the panels, and new questions could come back to the innovators. So it all integrates together. but each of the pieces operate slightly differently. So I'm going to go into more detail about those in the next slides. And I should say too that there's mentioned that we've got a chat box off to the side here, and we'll open that up for questions as we get further into this. And so you all can be asking or formulating your questions, and then when we open that chat box, we'll be ready to. So the forecasting effort, we're managing that here out of the Michigan State University offices, using nationally available data to predict outcomes, taking full advantage of the SAMHSA data sets, but also other health data. Some basic social economic data that economists use all the time that's available on the regional level. We're also looking at big data, you know, some of the stuff that's available like Google Trends. And then we'll feed these results into the innovation and barometer communities as appropriate. And as I mentioned, that's going to be implemented here at the national office. So it's more of a support to the other groups of the program. The innovation communities, now this is a nationally competitive call for proposals around that activity. And the main activity is to develop an innovative and low-cost way to forecast emerging behavioral health issues in the community that you select if you're going after this. So this, we're offering up to $150,000 of that's all cost per award, including full overhead. And the proposal would, you know, kind of spell out how that would be applied. It might be staff, it might be out-of-pocket expenses. There's a whole variety of things that graduate students are allowable under that one. The team must be led by land-grant university personnel, but as with CAPE 1, if there are, I think all of the communities, or maybe most of the communities anyway, certainly found non-land grant partners to work with on this, and that's certainly a possibility with this one too. If there's a really good institution that has some expertise that wants to partner with a land grant university, it could be done that way. So really, it just needs to be led by the land grant university people. And the other thing to keep in mind with this one is if you're going for this type of proposal, you want to avoid duplicating efforts that might be implemented by the national office. So if you're talking about using national SAMHSA data to forecast what's going on, then that's probably, in most cases, not going to be very competitive because it may be viewed as duplicative of stuff that's already going on elsewhere in the project. So bear that in mind. In addition to implementing their own local protocol, team leaders are going to join the National Learning Community, which is going to be composed of the CAPE 2 Technical Committee and the leaders of the other innovation communities. And of course, the regional people are part of the technical committee too. So the idea is that we're going to share back and forth this knowledge as we're learning things. So we're going to interact via webinars, just kind of in a smaller group setting to really sort out what's going on and identify promising practices that we can move forward with. And the full learning community will also be looking at these barometer community results as they are coming in. And we'll talk more about the barometer communities in a minute. So here it is. So the barometer communities, unlike the innovation communities, where each innovation community is going to have its own protocol, with the barometer community, there's a national protocol that's established by the technical committee and may be adapted as we move through the process of collecting the data on a biweekly basis over the course of a year. So as new issues get identified, that might get integrated into the questions that get asked. So the main function is to identify a 30-person local survey panel that will commit to filling out this very brief survey on a biweekly basis, and then working with that community to initiate action based on emerging issues that get identified through that. Again, this is a nationally competitive process. The funding is similar to CAPE 1, where we're funding up to 0.7 FTE of staff time bought out per award. So if you got 2 people involved, it might be 0.35 FTE for each of those, or it could be one person at halftime, another person at 20%. We don't really specify that. Just the total has to add up to 0.07. In addition, the panel members will be paid $75 an hour based on estimated time to complete the survey, and we're estimating about 4 hours over the course of the year. And there's full overhead as at your negotiated rate for that too. And as with the innovation communities, the team has to be led by land-grant university personnel, and with additional personnel coming from anywhere. So keep that in mind. And we thought that folks might want to see what the protocol might look like for the barometer community. This has already been approved by the Michigan State University Institutional Review Board in its current form. And so basically, there'll be an initial kind of intake survey that talks about the person's age and their race and gender and things like that. But once they've done that, then this is the one that they'll answer every other week for about a year. And you can just see the topics, and then they just asking kind of compared with the last 2 weeks, are you seeing a lot more of this, a lot less, a bit less, about the same, a bit more, or a lot more? So very quick to go down that list of 20 or so indicators. And then some very quick follow-up questions. Are you aware of new issues that have come up that have not been present in your community before, like the heroin issue this past year? If yes, go to 3. If no, you're done. And then 3 is, tell us more about this problem. It's an open-ended one. And then 4 is, how did you hear about the problem? And then a list of options with that. And that's it. That is the end of the survey. So it's really quite a quick survey. But it does happen, every other week, and so we need that consistent response from those 30 people for that amount of time. So that's the protocol that people will be looking at. So the national team is going to feed back these results to the local project leaders, so you get local results in addition to comparisons with other communities that are involved with the program. So, it might be that everybody's seeing a real uptick in heroin, or it could be that you're the only community that's seeing that. And so it's good to have those benchmarks. The results of the open-ended questions will, of course, be fed into the technical committee, the learning community for potential inclusion in future rounds of the barometer survey. And innovation community team leaders may also say, hey, well, we're hearing a lot about this. Maybe we can integrate that into our procedure. So again, there's feedback across the different parts of the project. And with that, that is our brief overview of what we're doing, and we're dying to hear your questions now. So I'm going to open up the chat box. And while people are typing, Courtney, I think you thought of 1 or 2 that people might be asking. You want to ask the question and then answer?
Sure. So one question that, Scott, I think you can clarify is whether the communities that are selected for the project would have to go through their own institutional review board process, or whether they're covered under Michigan State's approval.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's going to vary by institution. If your institution will accept the Michigan State University IRB approval, then I think you're good to go on, at least for the barometer communities, because that's a very standard protocol, and obviously you can be covered on that. In CAPE 1, we found that some institutions were not wanting to do that, and so they did do their own IRB. So it can vary, but in most cases it should be um, uh, allowed to fly under ours. The other thing that now the innovation communities, obviously, if they are collecting primary data from individuals, then they're going to need to do their own IRB because that's going to be a different protocol than would be the case for the barometer communities, and that would go through your own institutional review board process. We're hoping, though, that a lot of these innovation communities will come up with ideas that don't involve surveys. That could be one potential protocol, but there could be other protocols as well. So be thinking about that. So can several communities in a state apply? From Ann Rose Guarino. Yes, certainly multiple communities in a state can apply. I'm not sure if you're talking about multiple communities applying as one application or multiple communities each doing their own, but certainly that's allowable. Bob Stevens wants to know when the budget forms will be posted. I'm not sure about that, Bob. Rosa, you're on the line. I thought those were already posted, so maybe Rosa can clarify that. I think those are on the web, but if they're not, we'll make sure that we get them up there quickly. Suzanne Lowe II wants to know if community can do both projects, the barometer and the innovation projects. Yes, that's allowed, but I do recommend that it's going to be harder to be competitive on two things. So be aware of that, I guess. You're not going to stop anybody from applying, but it's going to be a bit harder to be competitive on both. Elaine Johannes says Robin Cole. I'm not sure what that means. So, other questions? And Rosa, did you have a response?
Yeah, I just went on the healthbench.info, and under news there is the budget template. So it is on there. Is that what he's referring to then?
I think so. Bob, does that answer your question?
Okay.
Looks like other people are typing, so we'll wait till they have a chance to get their questions out.
So we have another question here asking, are there items specifically prohibited for the budget for the innovation communities proposal?
Yes. Obviously, these need to go through the university budgeting process, and so there are certainly things that are typically not allowed in most university budgets, like alcohol purchases and things like that. But I think as long as they're sort of standard items that one would normally find in a research budget, you can plan on including them in the budget that you would submit. How many communities will be awarded for each type of proposal? From Suzanne Lowe. There's a little bit of flex there, but we were thinking in terms of 6 and 10. So 6 innovation communities and 10 pilot communities. But the way that we have our budget structured, if there are, 7 really fantastic innovation communities and we don't have quite the strength in the panel or the barometer communities, we do have the ability to shift back and forth a little bit. So it's not etched in stone, but kind of penciled in for 6 and 10. 6 innovation communities and 10 barometer communities. Oh, Suzanne Yuan has a really great question. can you explain about the kinds and levels of interventions that are expected from this project period? Well, obviously, these projects are going to go about a year, and so there's limitations on how much one can implement after one identifies a problem and starts to work on it. But in the CAPE 1 process, one of the things we did was to identify a whole array of potential interventions that one could look at in this context. And there's another set that are available through SAMHSA as well. I think there's something like 500 of them. Courtney, do you want to give one or two examples of the types of interventions that we were describing under CAPE 1?
Sure. So one of the examples of the interventions is a program called Mental Health First Aid, which is a training program for general community members to learn more about mental health issues, and specifically how to spot someone who may be in a mental health crisis. So the underlying idea is that there has been a lot of publicity about how to spot someone who is having a heart attack. What are the symptoms of a heart attack? We also know more about how to spot someone who may be having a stroke, what to look for if someone's experiencing a stroke, so that they can get the help that they need in a timely fashion. So the idea behind the mental health first aid program is that this would be a similar setup. So if we understand what signs to look for when someone is entering a mental health crisis, then we can more quickly get them the appropriate help that they may need. So there are specific training modules about depression and anxiety, about suicide, about psychosis, and this is typically done as a one-day training. There are adult and youth modules, so that's one example. And it looks like we have a couple other questions there. Will the regions be equally represented?
Yeah, and I was talking to myself on mute, so sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to try for, again, as we did with CAPE 1, we try for geographic balance. We try for balance across community types. We're looking for both urban and rural and communities in between. We're looking for communities with high percentages of underserved populations, and we also would like some communities that are more run-of-the-mill, I guess. So we're looking for a range of communities, and so that's so quality of proposal is important, and then balance across the regions and types of communities is also a consideration. So going in, I cannot say that we will have equal numbers of communities in each of the 4 USDA regions. It's going to depend on some of these other factors as well. Buddy wants to know how we define community. In general, we're looking at county or groups of counties or tribal areas would be another type of community. The problem with if we get sub-county, as you mentioned there, Buddy, is often it's difficult to dredge up appropriate data to kind of compare with in terms of the way data are collected nationally. One could think about an innovation community as possibly a sub-county area. People are still typing, so we'll stay on a little bit longer, get those questions answered.
This is explained in the call for proposals, but just to reiterate, the funding dates are approximately February of 2015 until March of 2016. The applications are due November 17th, and you should hear back about the applications in January.
I think it's the 19th, isn't it?
I'm sorry, yes.
Ann Rose Guarino wants to know the name of the youth mental health first aid. It goes by several names, actually, doesn't it, Courtney?
Well, there's one mental health first aid program, and they have a website that is mentalhealthfirstaid.org.org. So on that website, there is a link that you can click on to find a course, and it will specify if it is the youth or the adult program.
I think that has been adopted in several countries too, so you have to kind of make sure you're looking at the right one, or you might find one out of a different country, I guess.
The mentalhealthfirstaid.org website is the U.S. specific website. As Scott mentioned, this is a program that has taken off in many countries around the world. It started in Australia, and I believe they have a different website for the Australia program.
Well, I'm not seeing anybody else typing, so I appreciate your everybody being on today, and this will be posted on the CAPE website along with the other webinars. It looks like Sarah Yuan had another question. Whether there be additional funding sources available to awarded communities to implement the intervention. Not specifically. I suppose if you were doing an innovation community, you could set aside a little bit of that, but the idea is to identify things that can be sustained at the community level after the project is over. So we're not specifically in the business of funding the interventions so much as funding the lead up and the awareness creation around the intervention so that it can be sustained after the project closes. Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for being on board today, and we'll be in touch if you've got questions as you're thinking about these opportunities.